Spectrovision Radio.
Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, the biggest podcast in the universe. My name is Jordan, and I'm here, as always, locked in this liminal space with Tom and Mal.
That's me. And we're here to talk about all the things that they said weren't real. Today, that's going to be UFOs, alien abductions, and strange light from outer space. And then Tom and Jordan want me to talk about a strange experience that I had on a silent retreat a few weeks ago. So we'll end with that.
Well, first we're going to start with something news-ish. I think, shouldn't we just change the name of the show to UFOs, UFOs, and UFOs? Because that sort of seems to be how it's sort of shaken out a little bit.
We've made it through 2 whole episodes before this without directly talking about UFOs.
Well, we're
like
back
through the
with
entire
UFOs.
episode, but we're back.
Let's face it.
We're back with it, yeah.
So there's this group called Skywatcher, and they're putting out videos, and they're a kind of a collective of dudes, some of whom are PhDs, some of whom are well known in the UAP community, who are out in the desert with high tech. And it's a fascinating sort of endeavor. They have something that they refer to as like a radar dog whistle, which they claim attracts UAPs consistently, which they then observe using drones and people in helicopters, and they post shaky, grainy images of things in the sky, which is brand new, in the UFO world, just the shaky, grainy images. But what's interesting is that they're collecting data, right? And they're very into collaborating, sharing, peer review, I guess some kind of reproducibility. And they have established what they refer to as a living taxonomy of different types of UAP. 9, they claim. There's class 1, which is a tetra, shaped as a tetrahedron, which tumbles on multiple axes. A lot of tumbling going on with these things. The classic tic-tac, which we remember, right, from the military fighter jet images that the New York Times released in 2017. There's a thing called a blob, which is orb-shaped and pulsing and contains an internal light. Tends to be orange, I think. There's something called a beam, an IR-only orb-shaped UAP. So some of these can be seen visually. Some of them have to be seen with different technologies like infrared. A manta ray, which looks like a manta ray, does a lot of tumbling. A bright star, and that thing called the jellyfish. I'm not sure if we talked about the jellyfish video when it was like the thing that could only be seen with certain technology that was flying over military bases, and that made everyone really excited and happy. There's something called a hornet, something called an egg. Okay, cool. I immediately thought of Carl Linnaeus because that's just how my brain works. The celebrated 18th century Swedish doctor and biologist who functionally created our system of taxonomy. Very interesting dude. And Carl Linnaeus said in his Philosophia Botanica, in natural science, the principles of truth ought to be confirmed by observation. So I got my Linnaeus quote in there, so I'm happy about that.
Naturally.
Perfect.
Yes. Would have expected nothing less.
There's so much more to talk about with this Skywatcher crowd, including stuff easily, classified as my own personal opinion. But that, I think, is the gist of it. It's fascinating.
It is.
What do you guys think?
There's so many competing theories about what these things are and like what they're for and whatever. But based on what I've heard about the behavior, I mean, even just in that video itself and the way that they were talking about how they are and aren't able to interact with these things and how they seem to avoid direct observation, etc. It seems like, or I have this suspicion that one of their primary objectives somehow, in some sense, by some perspective, is to like tease us into trying harder to learn about them. Like sort of like, math is really boring to kids unless you gamify it somehow, right? And so if you just dangle a mystery in front of someone in just the right way, they'll start to do everything they possibly can to untangle it and figure it out. And these things just seem perfectly calibrated to provoke our curiosity. It's like they'll come when they're summoned, but not really. Like, you can't get too close. Like, there was a point in the video where he talked about the helicopter pilots said, like, never experienced this in my life. We went up here, we tried to get close to this thing, and it was like there was this ceiling of air that kept us from like going any farther, and we couldn't figure out why, and we eventually just had to come back like home. And it like very, very, very weird, and just continues to be persistently mysterious. So then I came up with that take, or that was my response to this story. And then literally like last night, I read this thing in John Mack's Passport to the Cosmos, which I decided to read. I literally just decided to start reading this book 2 days ago. And he said, "It is as if the agent or intelligence at work here were parodying, mocking, tricking, and deceiving the investigators, providing just enough physical evidence to win over those who are prepared to believe in the phenomenon, but not enough to convince the skeptic. In this apparently frustrating situation, there may lie a deeper truth and possibility. It is as if the phenomenon were inviting us to change our ways, to expand our consciousness and ways of learning, to use, in addition to our conventional ways of knowing and observing, methodologies more appropriate to its own complex, subtle, and perhaps ultimately unknowable nature." Like, there you go, John Mack.
That's really good. The trickster element, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even those guys in the video were like, well, what these things look like to the naked eye is not what it looks like on video, right?
Yeah.
I noted with some degree of frustration that they were. What do you think, Mel?
I find this delightful. I've been having some thoughts about, I have a media background. We all do. We're all artists, right? The thing that makes this conversation, the timbre of like, oh, there's something that's encouraging us, tricking us, playing with us, like almost like a loving parent or babysitter. Like, this is so cute to me. And it's a totally different tone than like, turn on any special that's about aliens or ghosts or UFOs, and what kind of music are you going to hear?
Oh, spoopy, theremin.
What kind of words are they going to use? They're going to use words like unnerving, terrifying, like in the article that I read for today. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so the tone ends up being like, you're not safe. And
right.
I just keep wondering, like, what if it was the magic school bus? Like, what if we were like Paddington on his new adventure? And I understand that because it feels like we're on the brink of annihilation when we're toying with reality, I guess, and what we might be assuming to be reality. But that's literally what babies do. That's what babies do. That's what we've all already done. So I think it's a really apt comparison. I'm so interested in what could be a much more neutral conversation, or even delightful conversation possibly, than what I feel like I've been ingesting my whole life, which is basically just the X-Files and like, which is wonderful and fun, but like, does this need to be scary? Or are we talking about hornets and eggs and tic tacs? Like, it's just a bunch of bugs in my backyard. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's funny, the idea of this stuff being scary and threatening and, oh, we can't tell the general populace because everyone will plot. But if you think about it, even in the sort of like the canon of UAP phenomenon started about the time we got the bomb and hidden information by the government who is reverse engineering stuff so they can weaponize it, you know. It's not free nuclear power for the masses. It's scary bad man has technology, arms race bullshit, and then it's constantly brought to us as weapons capabilities when in fact, clearly it's something that has way more potential, right, for humans. And when I read the Skywatcher website, honestly, it's cosplay military stuff with these guys. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm going to read you guys an excerpt from the Skywatcher website in like a worldwide wrestling announcer voice, because that's just the only thing I hear. So it's like, Skywatcher, capabilities, a pioneering approach to air domain awareness, integrating operational expertise with beyond frontier technologies to enable greater multi-domain awareness, tactical data acquisition, multi-sensor deployments in threat area, What the fuck does that? What's the threat area? Multi-sensor deployments and threat area.
And threat area.
Yeah, just keep thinking about Pete Hegseth on the Signal chat going like, OPSEC is secure.
Okay, well, I will...
American flag socks.
To be...
Flame emoji. Fist. Eggplant. America.
To play the literal devil's advocate.
Really
I do think that people approach this stuff from whatever perspective they're most familiar. And like all these guys who are doing the Skywatcher program are defense contractors. Like
I was going to say they feel military adjacent or
they are
ex-military.
military.
Yeah, right.
And I think, and to their credit, one of the guys, the James Barber character of this whole thing, he did this like 2-hour interview with Ross Coulthart and like whatever. And I came away from that feeling like, here's a guy who has been working as a defense contractor in these different capacities for like a long time, and he is a black ops guy, but in the sort of boring way, right, where it's like, yeah, you have this real business that you do real business with, and then like every once in a while some other sort of entity taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, we need you to come do this job for us, and then you go do the job, and most often the job is like fly the helicopter over here, pick up this thing, bring it back over here, and that's your job, and like don't tell anyone. And so he comes at it from this sort of angle of, I want to do better, I want to do more. But like the guy is still a military type dude, and the people he knows are all military type people, and the investors he knows are probably like in that world too. So naturally this thing is going to sound like that. That's their language. Those are their paradigms. People do what they can with what they have. I come at this, I can't shake myself of all like a lot of my religious sort of language, because like that's kind of where I'm from. Like I grew up religious, and so like a lot of my language, a lot of my understanding, a lot of my paradigms, like that's the material that they're built out of. I don't necessarily think that any of these things are wrong. And I also think, like, Mal, to your point, like, can it be more fun and less threatening? The answer is yes on both sides. People have been injured by these things. And like there's truth in sort of both ends. Like I wouldn't say I'm 100% convinced about anything, but I find this narrative very compelling that a little bit of all of this is true. There are secret programs that have built UFO type machines that fly around and like do sort of nefarious things. But then there are also like non-human intelligent craft that like are flying around and doing their things. I think that there's probably a really big scope of things going on. And the fact that this Skywatcher program is summoning 9 different kinds of UFOs, are we going to sit back and say, well, that's probably all of them?
Sure.
This Skywatcher program, they've probably seen all of them. There's probably 9. Now we know that there are 9 kinds of UFOs. Like, what percentage of these things do you think these guys have managed to see? And it's probably not 100%. Maybe 50, maybe 20, maybe 10, maybe 5%. Like, and if it's a lower percentage than 100%, it means that there's like a lot more out there that we could potentially find out about or not or whatever. It's yes and. It's everything, right?
Several years ago, my friend, when she was pregnant, she decided to do home births, and so she did hypnobirthing. And I learned a decent amount from her during that time, but the thing that really stuck with me was that she talked about how the purpose of hypnobirthing in many ways is to remove a lot of the sort of culturally imposed ideas about how painful and how scary the process of birth will be. That it's like, you see all this stuff in media of just women just like screaming and bleeding and sometimes dying. And and then in comedies even like, yep, it's the worst thing. I tore hole to hole. It's going to ruin your life. Like, just like this thing that basically prepares you to feel like, oh, this is going to be, I need to get the epidural. This is going to be the worst day of my life. I know it's going to be amazing, but I'm going to be ripped open by a human and it's going to be awful. And to try and actually remove a lot of those ideas and instead remind yourself just how natural this is, that you don't have to do anything and your body will do this. That there are like, bush women who just like literally drop a baby and then keep working through the day. There's a way to prepare your mind for something unknown, possibly difficult, maybe not straightforward. Even something like death can be approached with a mindset that doesn't make you suffer quite as much and like allows you to approach these subjects that, might include some complicating things about reality and humanity and our futures, but also doesn't just need to be like, we're about to be annihilated and everything about this is scary. I think that the way we prime ourselves, and honestly, the necessity of various different, because you're talking about people who speak different languages. Part of the reason we do that is so we can talk to each other. It's like, yeah, we've got military people over here who are speaking that language. Might be good to get some artists involved.
Thank you. See, my issue
Amen.
with this is I have no issue at all with what they're doing on its face. What my issue
Sure.
is with what is being implied. Because they are hardcore materialists, and they're like, they brag about how there's no emotional component and they don't feel like this is a religious experience. And I'm like, how quaint, how adorable that you're taking this real 20th century approach to a 21st century issue. And the idea that like they're not gay or, no homo UAP observation because they're not, emotionally, attached. And I'm like, cool. You're going to have the experience that you're already setting out the parameters of your experiences. If you're somehow discrete from these things you're observing, you're not. And like there is the individual's relationship to the phenomena itself, whatever it is. They can't separate themselves from it, and to pretend that they can or use the intermediary of technology is fine, I guess. I mean, I really do like the idea of data analysis and collection. I really do.
Same.
I love that, actually. But to deny this entire other aspect of the human experience and how we interact with our environment and to what extent we are part of or are our environment or what it says about us, I know that that's sticky and chaotic and in its own way scary, but I just don't want these guys rocking up and with their fucking threat areas and talk and like pretending that they've got ownership of the knowledge, because they don't.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe this is naive, but could it be inevitable that eventually all of this will be more accessible, that just the way most technology is? You look at how like there used to be 2 cameras in the world, like film cameras. Like you could make movies if you lived in France or if you lived in LA, and now everyone has a camera. Like 12-year-olds have cameras and they can make movies. Wouldn't it be cool if we could use that dog whistle? That seems like it'd be bad too. But
they talked about 2 different kinds of dog whistles, and in the video that came out just a couple of days ago, it was about like the radar or the materialist dog whistle. But in the next one that they teased, that they're planning to talk about the psi phenomenon stuff, like people are, and you could talk about that too, as in terms of the increasing accessibility. Like once it becomes more culturally accepted that stuff is real, then more people will become interested in it. More people will try to kind of track it down and use it and try to figure out how it works. And so I think that there's sort of an inevitable democratization of not only the technologies that they're using to dog whistle, but if you thought of psychological abilities or psi abilities as a kind of technology, then that is also going to be democratized to some degree. So, I look at something like Skywatchers, like these guys, they have no mandate. Like they're doing this just because they feel like it. And then they got enough money to buy the stuff that was expensive that they wanted to buy and go to the places that they wanted to go to be able to do the kind of things that they wanted to do.
Because it's Defense Department stuff.
But there's nothing to say. But there's nothing to say that anybody couldn't do the exact same thing they're doing, right? Like
with enough money.
Yeah, with enough money.
Right.
And it is becoming more accessible. So the things that they have to spend a lot of money on now may not cost so much in the future.
True.
Et cetera.
My point is that you don't need all the gear to have an experience or to be open to the experience or actually have maybe you have your own internal dog
unless
whistle.
the experience that you want is
Consider that.
capturing it on radar. Like
right, unless you're wanting, right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is in its own way worthy and valuable. I'm just saying that like I object strongly to the degree to which we have been hyper individuated and made to feel apart from our own lives and our own worlds and just turned into passive consumers. Like someone will feed us the information that is frankly our divine birthright. You know what I'm saying? And do it in such a way that is. And it's probably because I'm trying to emotionally process the idea that everything that I was taught as a child about what it means to be a citizen or a good person has been basically like smeared in shit and handed back to me to eat. And I don't really love that. Like I woke up and realized that I grew up on the Death Star. I didn't want to do that. Didn't want to do that. But here we are, you know what I mean? So then it's like, well, what are we going to do? I keep thinking, Mal, that thing you said that was so beautiful about AI being a child and how we must parent that. It's not enough that it exists and it's like just mimicking and, telling you whatever it is you want to hear and therefore not to be trusted. I mean, it must be guided. Anyway, I feel very soapboxy today.
I like
I'm
it.
sorry about that. I'm not really sorry,
sure.
but
I bring my soapbox to every conversation.
yeah.
Mal, I think you've got a story about abductions today, and I want to hear it.
This is some classic fare over here. It's an article from Mirror, which is a publication out of the UK, I believe. And it's got what many articles about alien abductions do, which is like it's written a little strangely. I have no idea why the story was written right now. Both of the people who are written about in the article are the main two people who were talked about. Their abductions were in 1989. So I'm like, I don't know why this was written, but there's a lot in here, I feel, that is very interesting to discuss. The title of the article is, "I was abducted by aliens. Here are the signs that you might have been too." They're referring to a British man named Philip Kinsella, who was abducted in 1989, which was the same year that Linda Napolitano was abducted. I don't know if you've heard of the Manhattan alien abduction. I was able to watch just a little bit of it on Netflix, and I look forward to finishing it. She has a wild story. So she and Philip were abducted the same year. She was abducted in downtown Manhattan, and 23 witnesses saw her being lifted over the Brooklyn Bridge. So one of her quotes, I think she told Vanity Fair, "If I was hallucinating, then the witnesses saw my hallucination." So they call her abduction like the abduction of the century for that reason. And British Kinsella's story is a bit different. So she claims to have an experience where she was like lifted and levitating in her house, lifted out her window and like flying over Manhattan, and people saw that happen. Philip claims, and I have to say there's some trigger warnings here because this is not a pleasant experience, and this is part of this as well, is that he says that he was levitated and moved through his house before being strapped naked to a board and probed. And then then the article just drops without explaining that he's clairvoyant. And then it says that he shares 6 signs that could indicate you've had an alien encounter, but they only share 1 sign. So it's like, that's what I mean about like the dubious writing. You're like, everybody just take this with a grain of salt. I want you to know that this is what we have to dig through in this area right now, and maybe eventually Skywatcher will help us have little encyclopedias about.
We'll do a
this stuff. And
listicle on the
fun?
6. The 6
Yes.
Maybe you got abducted. Whatever. Nobody reads after the first ad anyway.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? It's like 6 signs that you could be that indicate you had an alien encounter.
Levitating, strapped to a board, multiple witnesses. I don't know what's happening. Probing.
Yeah.
Well, he says the sign that's talked about in this article is implants. So he says that like implants the size of about a grain of rice that he says is covered in organic tissue. Those are his words, organic tissue, so your body doesn't reject it. So he has like a little lump behind his ear, and then also like these 3 little triangular spots that he thinks are from his abduction. An abduction and a benediction. They also bring up Fran Drescher. Are you guys familiar with the fact that Fran from The Nanny, the sitcom in the 90s, has been open about she and her partner, both when they were in middle school, but like they were on drives with their fathers and apparently had alien encounters. And she claims that they have implants and that they have the matching scars on their hands, because they do have scars on the same place on their hands. But he's like, nah, I don't think that's what it is. But apparently, according to what I investigated, he hasn't denied that they were both abducted. He's just like, I don't think the scars are anything.
Definitely.
Well,
I
yeah.
was definitely abducted, but
Nah.
I draw the line at implants.
draw the line. at
Fran's
scars.
Did you
Fran's
guys?
wild over there.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
know that John Lennon saw a UFO in like
That sounds familiar to me.
1975 and like gave interviews about it? And in the liner notes of whatever record came out, Walls and Bridges or whatever record, he goes, "I saw a UFO August something 1975."
And then
Did
they
he-
killed him.
Quite openly about it.
Did he happen to go into specifics? Like, was it a blob or was it a
He
bee?
absolutely went into, no, it was more of the OG, sort of like blinking light, sort of like saucer craft with the thing on top that he just watched fly over, down the river and just, got a damned good look at it. Didn't report being abducted, but I don't, anyway, I didn't know the Fran Drescher thing at all. I didn't know that woman had been abducted and witnessed by 24 people. That's wild.
Yeah. So there's a quote in the article that I pulled because he was offering tips on how to spot potential implants. And he said, such as noticing an itchy spot or a specific problem area. And it's like, okay. So anybody with a bump on their body.
Guess I was abducted.
People who have an itch. Or, immediately in the Manhattan Alien Abduction Netflix limited series, they get into hypnosis and the idea that basically, like, the reason that you need to spot signs is because it's possible your mind has been wiped by after your alien abduction. So then only through hypnosis will these things come up. And listen, I'm open to this. Like, I genuinely am. But I also think there's a lot of danger here. There's just so much. There's so much that I feel like this is just a lot to pull apart and to work through as a continuing conversation together. Because the idea that it's like, well, I went to my possibly nefarious hypnotist, you know what I mean, who had an objective of some kind, and I showed them a bump, and then we talked about aliens, and then I remembered,
yeah.
No, I don't know anything about Fran's experience, right? Not other than what I was just able to uncover with just a rudimentary Google search. But mentioning we were in the car with our dad, both she was in the car with her dad and her partner and producer. Eventually, I think that they divorced eventually, but they both experienced this in the car with their dad, and I'm like, I wonder if they've ever seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where their dad was driving around in a car and saw some lights in the sky. This is what makes this territory so tricky for me. As willing as I am to completely listen to someone's experience, I'm concerned about the possible ripple effects of just people dealing with how hard it is to be a person, how difficult it is to have been harmed at any point in your life and then to have to deal with that, and to sometimes really want answers and to find bumps and think, well, maybe I'm the way I am because of this. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I find this area a little concerning.
I've heard stories of people who had abduction experiences where the memories were sort of altered, or they had a childhood experience in which circus monkeys came into their room. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then years later, they were like, I guess that's what I could sort of, apprehend as what was happening when I was 5, And it reminds me of my first nightmare where I was 4 and in the living room of our home in Fort Lauderdale, and behind the living room chair, Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street rose up very slowly, and it was fucking terrifying. And now I'm like, fuck, was I abducted?
Awful.
Well, I don't think so.
The truth is,
there must be data of people, by this point, do we not have, hopefully, a collection of data of people going like, okay, I was abducted and it went like this and it was like this. And what do these stories, I mean, these accounts, have in common? The, how you might have been abducted article in the Mirror doesn't do a lot for me.
No.
But anyway.
Yes, me neither.
Right, but yeah.
It's interesting. We pick these headlines partly because it's like, hey, you may have seen this story because this sort of went out to a wider audience than, frankly, I mean, my media consumption habits are a little bit, let's call them esoteric at this point.
Yeah.
And so I hear about a lot that I find very compelling and very convincing, but it's not going to penetrate the wider awareness or attention sphere of the media economy. And so I know right now that there is an ongoing and well-funded effort to try to catalog many thousands of abduction stories and experiences, reported experiences, to try to do the kind of data analysis that we're talking about. Like that's going on.
Right. And aren't there people who are like, this is categorically different from PTSD trauma, like physical abuse?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
it is categorically different. And so I'm actually going to pull up another John Mack quote because the whole idea, he was one of the pioneers, frankly, of hypnotherapy induced recall of abduction experiences.
Recovery.
And so people would come to him with stories. Sometimes they would come to him with stories that they remembered and they wanted to talk through. And sometimes they would come to him with fragments of things that they didn't understand. And then he would help them through with hypnotherapy, like come up with fuller versions of those stories. And this is what he had to say about it. So John Mack he was a very serious clinician and scientist. This is not a trifling person. This is someone who took data very, very seriously. And he came from a paradigm of strict materialism. He came from a very secular background. He was a classically trained psychiatrist and psychologist. He was not interested in the weird, crazy things. What happened to him was that he encountered a lot of stories that he had a hard time explaining. And so I'll read this quote. He says, of the experience of talking to this growing number of people who had these types of experiences, he said, I was then faced with the choice of either trying to fit these individuals' reports into a framework that fit my worldview. Mm-hmm. They were having fantasies, strange dreams, delusions, or some other distortion of reality, or of modifying my worldview to include the possibility that entities, beings, energies, something could be reaching my clients from another realm. The first choice was compatible with my worldview, but did not fit the clinical data. The second was inconsistent with my philosophical grounding and with conventional assumptions about reality, but appeared to fit better what I was finding. It seemed to me to be more logical and intellectually more honest to modify my cosmology than to continue trying to force my clients into molds that clearly did not suit them. I think this is a really, really critical posture to take when it comes to talking about abduction stories. Because Mal, you're right. Hypnotherapy is really, really tricky because we know two things. For sure, we know two things. We know that it is possible to access repressed memories that are true and real with hypnotherapy. Like it is possible to help someone access true memory that actually happened that they did not have access to before. We also know that when you are under hypnosis, you are highly suggestible and you can come up with memories that never happened. Both of those things are true. And so it stands to me to reason that plenty of the abduction stories that come from hypnotherapy sessions may not be true. They may be interpretations of other experiences or something. But it seems really disingenuous to me to then categorically dismiss all of them as being untrue. And if any percentage of them are true, then it's like, well, then we have another thing to be talking about.
Okay, once again, I'm going to go back to my personal obsession of reported rains of blood and flesh in 19th century America because I get to do that.
It's great. Never leave that one alone.
Over 150 years, people claimed that it rained blood and or meat. And these accounts made it into the newspapers. And it was quite extraordinary to have some very poignant accounts of people saying, okay, look, you can tell how they give their names. Neighbors came and either witnessed it or witnessed the aftermath. They all gave their names. They all asked for this phenomena to be explained, and they described the phenomena. It was a clear sky. There was a little wind. There was a red cloud, whatever it was. And you have accounts from people stretching well over a century who could not have known each other. Some of them were lawyers. Some of them were slaves. Right. The slaves didn't get to write the papers, but they did give their accounts to people, which was then mediated through the newspapers. My point being is that when you amass that much data, you can start to compare. And the thing that shined through with these reports was that the stuff that was maximally consistent were the eyewitness reports of the events themselves. The stuff that was the most scattershot, crazy-ass, chaotic were the so-called scientific explanations offered simply to make the weirdness go away. And it was all over the map, right? So my point being is that with these abduction narratives, you can look at that and start to see, I would imagine, not only the outliers necessarily of stuff that may, this isn't really supported by other data, but you can start to see through lines, thematic through lines, for lack of a better word, in terms of how, when, where, and what happened.
I think that there's just, I like the word you use, Jordan, about posture. I feel like that's what a lot of this, if you're interested in this stuff, if you're listening to this podcast, then you're probably working on your posture. Because really,
God knows I need to.
I can't just take Philip Kinsella's story and be like, and that happened. Isn't that crazy? I can't actually. I don't have enough information. I've read one article about him, and I've started a Netflix series about a related event, like related, quote unquote. But I can try my best to put that on my little, in my mind, spreadsheet of, another story like that reminds me of this other story. And there's like an open curiosity that can be very difficult to maintain, but that we are capable of.
Yeah, absolutely.
That isn't the same thing as writing everyone off or taking everybody as full forced fact, which we just know from being alive you can't do. We can't do that with each other's stories day to day, because every once in a while you meet someone who just like really wants attention, and is willing to lie to get it.
Yep, that's true.
There's a vulnerability to that openness that a lot of people aren't necessarily willing to invest in or expose themselves to.
Yeah, we talked about this with Kelly.
It's not gullibility.
That we're afraid of being the dupe. We're afraid of being gullible and naive. But I think that an open curiosity is not the same as a willingness to say, I'm not going to clamp down on a conclusion about this.
Right.
That's just the scientific method. That's just understanding that science will continue to evolve.
That's exactly right. The scientific method is we don't know. And we reserve the right to change our minds if we get new data. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of it. Not like that didn't happen because that can't happen.
Yeah.
That's stasis.
I love the way that you framed it too. The idea that it's like, this is the best data we have. Like, this is the data we were working with on these topics. And it's exciting, but it's limited,
Well, also the abduction, the whole abduction part of the whatever alien UFO UAP thing is always scared the shit out of me, right? It's deeply, it can be really awful and traumatic,
right?
Where these things, I've heard stories where these things are like, why stop screaming? Why are you screaming? We're going to erase your memories later. And they just don't even things that look like, praying mantises. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I just don't want to know. I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't. That's a no.
Philip Kinsella, his alien abductions, he described them as 7 to 8 foot dinosaurs. They were like, they were
the
reptilian.
Lizard, the
reptilians.
I have no desire. I don't want to be levitated by dinosaurs in my bedroom at night.
Right. Or,
I mean, I feel very
seriously.
similarly about people's experiences, ghost experiences and experiences with the paranormal. It seems like some people seem to have these experiences where they just know not to be scared. Like an EMT sees a person who's passed away on EMTs and nurses, man, they have so many stories that seem really non-threatening. It's like, and then I saw that person and I went back to their room and they were dead. So I don't know why they were walking. Or, I've definitely been on Reddit a time or two and like,
oh my God, hospices
stories.
And hospitals. Oh my God.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then there are other people who seem to be tortured and mortified and terrified. And, the truth is that there could be explanations for this, but we don't have them yet. We don't have them yet.
Yeah. And I think that they're also very, very personalized. Like when people do come to any kind of understanding, I mean, I've heard a lot of accounts of people who are, and sometimes they'll try to communicate it, but it's very clear that like they have for themselves gotten a kind of like closure of some kind on it. Like they feel like they understand it on a deep level for themselves, and maybe even in the context of like the world. Like they're like, I feel like this is what it means for me and for us, but like they can only use words to communicate that. And it's just not good enough. And they just can't, like, they can't get it out. And a lot of the time, and then, some of those people, they'll say, listen, like, I have, there are parts of this that I can't share because I don't know how to share it, or because it's just not, I know that it's not really appropriate to share it because like, it won't make any sense to you, or it won't, so it's like, I think this is a deeply phenomenological phenomenon. So, and I think that's true.
Phenomenological phenomenon.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry for that.
I like
I feel
that.
like I need to pay a fine for having said those words together.
Too many syllables.
Yes, yes. I want to share just a very quick sort of treat of the last story. And this is like the most boring of them, so I figured we'd save it till last.
Okay.
And this is about a mysterious light from the dawn of time, which is challenging everything we thought we knew about the early universe. That's a bit hyperbolic, but we're going to go with it. So once again, Mr. James Webb, the friendly neighborhood space telescope, not to be confused with its old comparatively blind Hubble, is literally and figuratively opening up the aperture on our understanding of the cosmos. Recent imaging shows an unexpectedly bright glow from a galaxy called Jade's GSZ13-1, a name that just rolls right off the tongue.
Everybody knows that one.
Yeah, everyone. That's a very, very popular galaxy.
Yeah.
So this galaxy is super, super old. It's about 13.5 billion years old, which is about 330 million years shy of the beginning of the universe, assuming you buy the Big Bang timeline, which, well, we'll go into that some other time.
Yeah.
The point is that the glow is from a Lyman alpha emission, a kind of hydrogen radiation that we shouldn't be able to see from so long ago, but because supposedly all that kind of light got absorbed by this thick gas that filled the universe so soon after the alleged Big Bang. But somehow we are seeing this light, which means somehow the light from this galaxy, this particular kind of light, broke through that fog. So what does it mean? Well, at a high level, it's just another big piece of anomalous data, which we've been talking about, right? Smacking into the windshield of our cosmological assumptions, forcing us back to the drawing board, if I may mix my metaphors, to figure out how and when the universe happened. I love any piece of data that comes out of the James Webb stuff because I think people, scientists, astronomers are more willing to be open-minded about some of this stuff because it's so far away. It's so distant. It's not personal. So it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, was there a Big Bang? Okay, well, we don't know, but it's our best guess. Okay, great. Was it 13.8 billion years ago? Well, remind me again what a year is. Is a year the measurement of time that we get from measuring how long it takes for the Earth to go around the sun? We do the best we can. We have this sort of like box of tools that don't really work, but we're like, well, we're asking big questions here. We see these lights in the sky. We're trying to pull this apart. We got a lot of really interesting data, and we think this is what happened. And I think that it is really, really important for us to be very open to the idea that, like, at any time we may build a bigger telescope and we may see some stuff that's just like, oh, that theory that you had? So. Yeah, no, that wasn't it. Sorry. So. Yeah,
it's what Mal was talking about us being babies. I feel like we're just getting in terms of, intellectual object permanence where, universe mommy has like, it actually exists after you know what I mean? We're like, holy shit.
Universe mommy.
Oh my gosh, it's still there.
Oh my God, what the implications? I think that's what, I think we're there. You know what I mean? And the UFOs are like, jangle my keys.
I honestly, it makes me think of Buddhism, beginner's mind. It's where we want to be. And it's scientifically, from a detective standpoint, where you always want to be. The truth is that Carl Sagan famously talks about how the more that he knows, the smaller he feels. Very, very smart people like Einstein and Carl Sagan saying, yeah, I'm a baby. Basically, like this is what gurus and wise people do, is they realize how little they know. And that state of openness, it allows them to, honestly, to transform, which is kind of what that's what life is really doing, right? I can't help but think that so much of this is about just trying to maintain that state and to realistically gather this in a way that we're not making assumptions. I listened to a talk several years ago about a man saying that it was impossible for you to even really truly understand your mother. If you really love your mother, you're so close to your mother that it's like, yeah, but you weren't present for the first 20, 30 years of her life. You'll never know her completely. We all contain multitudes. The universe contains infinite multitudes of multitudes, and we're all the universe. You know what I mean? It's just like, it is impossible for us to know. So a state of not knowing, a state of nothing, is actually kind of the goal.
The first card in the major arcana of the tarot deck, at least the commonly accepted tarot deck going back a few centuries, is called the Fool. And it's the fool who embarks on the great journey. And he's kind of a moron, but he's open, and he might walk off a cliff, or he may, end up in the greatest situation he's ever been in. But partially it's just his openness and his willingness to embark upon this journey that is the prerequisites for its greatness. He's not just a dipshit. He's actually going down a new path.
Mal, I feel like this is a good segue to your experience at the Silent Retreat.
I guess just to tease the experience, I've been meditating in earnest because for a long, long time, I considered myself like a busybody ADHD workaholic who could only meditate distance running. I just didn't think it was possible for me to sit in silence. And eventually, the state of my anxiety and depression became something that needed some very active. I needed to learn how to not be in the mind. My mind was toxic, like it was a completely toxic place. And so that's sort of what brought me to meditation was, is it possible for me to just like turn this off, or even so I could get like a 20-minute break even? That's kind of the way I approach this. And honestly, I think this is the way people come to all kinds of spiritual resources and mindfulness resources, is often just for a little relief. So what I haven't predicted, or what I wasn't ready for, was that as I've kind of gone deeper into meditation, I'm starting to have, I grew up religious, and so I'm accustomed to having what some people might call spiritual or mystical experiences. And I'm hoping that won't make people immediately think of me as someone who is completely unrelatable. I hope it's actually a relatable thing to hear somebody say that. But I'm accustomed to feeling moved in the face of something I don't quite understand, or to feel like my mind has been opened a little bit in a way that makes me feel loved by God, I would say. You can use whatever word you'd like. But what has been happening to me is spiritual experiences I don't recognize at all, and that in some ways feel a bit scary to me. And that's what I experienced this time around on my silent retreat. I would say that the intensity of 7 days of silence, or longer, some people do this for months, but I think it's just a way to sort of boot camp your meditative practice. And I didn't go in searching for like, I'm going to go to the next level. I was just like, I think I need to brush up on my meditation skills because I'm starting to get a little more stressed than I would like. That's basically why I went. And I came out feeling like I was all shaken up like a soda can, and I think I might have said this before, like Mrs. Potato Head with like all the pieces put in the wrong places. But the strange thing is that my life has taken on a new clarity, and somehow even though the experience I would say was like a little unsettling and maybe a little disorienting, I actually feel clearer and refreshed, maybe is the word. It's like, whoa, you're not what you thought you were, huh, kid? Why don't we just start again?
Oh, I'm loving this.
Yeah. I am.
Yeah,
I kind of want to go deep on this.
We are going to go deep on this. If you guys, listeners, watchers, whatever, however you're consuming this episode of content, as we like to call it.
Ow.
I know. I did that just
Jeez.
for Tom. If you want to hear the rest of Mal's story about the silent retreat and becoming a rearranged Mrs. Potato Head, head over to godsghostufos.com. That's where we keep all the cool secret stuff, and that's also where you can go and talk to us and to other maybe terminally curious people.
Terminally curious.
And we're going to say goodbye. I'm going to say see you next week, and I hope you come back.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We love you.